First Nations, and the stuff that we do is to try and make tomorrow easier for our younger ones, for the ones that are going to be stepping into our spots.
We're here to take part in the planning of active measures and income assistance.
I'm here in Vancouver to learn about income assistance and to take the information back to the youth of the
I really want to acknowledge our thanks to the elder for being here with us today. I don't think we can figure out where we're going unless we know where we've been, and I appreciate having you here with us today and your words of wisdom. It always sets the tone to start and certainly lets us leave feeling with our minds and heads clear and our hearts full.
But we're talking about income assistance, we're talking about social assistance, and that's one aspect of it. But there's also a huge unemployment rate, right? I see it as there being two different things. People who actively seek out social assistance, and then there's a lot of people, and I'm maybe speaking on behalf of my own community, where the unemployment rate is very, very high.
I think the number one thing that we need to start really looking at is the way we approach education. That's I think it's our biggest asset. Right now, it's probably one of our biggest downfalls. Our students are coming out of there not motivated, not excited, and it's a way of thinking is what's going on. It's the way they're thinking about it, and the way the generations that are from the past are thinking about education. You know, you think about those first experiences of the free education we were promised were terrible, and that effect has bled through generations to generations. And so by the time kids are reaching grade 6, they're ready to drop out. And that has a lot to do with the perception that's around education and how they're viewing education. And there's no value for it. They don't see the value for it.
You know, some of our youth aren't ready for that cultural step yet. And like in my community especially, I'm just using this as an example, a lot of our young people are saying that they feel as though they're being segregated from like farmhouse. You know, they go in there and they're not aware of the cultural protocols and things along those lines, so they're made to kind of feel like an outsider. And I think that's something that we need to address within our communities. If we want retention of culture and language and things like that, we need to make sure that it's a safe environment for our youth and that they feel like they're being incorporated into that process.
But for some reason, I feel like as First Nations people, to a degree, have shifted our mentality where it's all the school's fault. The kids aren't going through the system and learning and being successful contributors and being interested. It's about the community and the parents just as much as it is about the school. You know, like you can't expect your child to learn how to read just by going to school. You have to be teaching your child to read at home too. Like, just as an example. So I feel like our expectation of the school system, we put everything in it, all our eggs in one basket, when really what it is about creating that environment where parents can be involved, where community is involved, and where it's a holistic approach to education.
I was very fortunate to grow up in a house where I had two very, very passionate women who worked very hard, my mother and my grandmother, and my great-grandmother who worked until she was 105 years old. That sort of pride has been instilled in me, and I'm proud of the work that I do, and I'm proud of where I go. And unfortunately, a lot of our young people are missing that cultural connection and that pride that goes along with that. And I think if we get back to that pre-context, it's very important to understand that we come from a very proud people. We are very proud. And we need to find a way to get that back into our schools, and into our communities, and into our youth.
This ideal of a handout, and I know for us in the Yukon, with our modern day treaty agreements, you know, we had our leaders go down and say, we're not here for a handout, this isn't what it's about, and that's talking a little bit about that self-government piece, and the whole point of that for us was, and it was on this premise of Together Today for Our Children Tomorrow, was the elders of 73 in the Yukon saying, no, like, we don't want to be on special assistance, that's not who we are, that's not who we ever want to be. We are self-sufficient and we can be. And so it's just, you know, looking at, it's, you know, that's about 40 years ago now.
but we're still kind of in that same situation. So there's something about the system that isn't working. So I think it's just a matter of addressing those issues of the past and coming up with a new strategy.
We want to enable youth to live lives entirely of their own choosing, right? So that may mean training, that may mean subsistence living. We want to get to a place where they can live, in a self-determining way. And I mean that in a very literal sense, that they will be able to determine, free of any hindrances of other people's opinions or of other government's policies, of how they want to live their life. And for some people, that may mean, growing their own food, living off the land again.
Bringing back the traditional ways and teachings of our elders and being respectful to one another, and being humble, and that it's okay to make mistakes.
I don't think it's only important that we teach our young people that. I know that that's the discussion we're really having right now is, educating our First Nation students and our kids on, who they are and who's along the line. But I think there's a real need for us to educate the general Canadian public and all the young people coming up in the schools, because I don't know how many times I've gone, to school in a post-secondary institution and heard blatantly racist things, or they have no idea about First Nations people in, Canada. The lack of understanding is phenomenal. And I think it's part and parcel of our responsibility to make sure that they're educated and understand about our people, our needs, our concerns, our communities.
We have a wish list of what we want to do. So what do we need to do to get to that point? Is start making action plans on ourselves. Just like Gandhi, be the change you want to see.
We have to find proper changes relating to the youth. A culture around the world has never been the same. The way my grandparents lived is different from me, and the way their grandparents lived from them is different for them. It's always changing. There's always been differences, and so we always have to find that balance. I believe the universe is about balance. We have to find those. And of course, that's where the challenge, but yeah.
How can we take this and deliver it into our communities? Because I know when you send emails, a lot of them don't want to look at it. So I want to use that that technique of firsthand kind of get these into our communities.
We got to come up with preventative programs. Let's get these issues in the beginning. Let's not say, we got this issue, how are we going to fix it? We got this issue, how are we going to fix it? Let's think of ways of stopping the problem before it starts.
The next 2 years, what we can do in our own provinces with our youth is make small working groups within the different communities, specifically working on what we're talking about here today and how we're going to make it a better tomorrow.
I don't know, I come of the mind that, there's a lot of protections in place for us through the Indian Act. What we really need to be changing is the way that we're identified as people through that document. I think that's the mentality we really need to change is the way that people view us in Canada. That we're lesser beings, that we deserve lesser things, because it couldn't be further from the truth.